Hey guys, it's Dave. We've finally made it through Friday to another weekend. Hope your week has gone okay. Today I have a ton of Rocket Lab news to cover for you. It's really just been a flood that's come out the past several days. Most of it has been pretty good, but there is some bad news sprinkled in as well that we do need to talk about and shareholders should be aware of. Before we dive into all that, though, I hope you will consider subscribing if you're not already a subscriber, and if you are already a subscriber, hitting that like button always helps out with the algorithm, so thank you so much for everyone who does that. Okay, with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into this week's Rocket Lab updates. Starting off with the stock, it has been quite a choppy week, but we did get a nice bounce back yesterday, which is obviously nice for us shareholders who have endured quite a rough downturn in the stock. It does seem right now like we're kind of holding that 3.7, 3.69 type of range, going back to a 1-year and even 2-year chart. We do kind of have some support around that level, so hopefully, the stock will hold there and not break below it. If it does break below, I think maybe once it hit 3.5 and that's kind of the lowest. If it goes below that, well, who knows, all bets are off. But so far, so good at least on that end. Personally, as I did mention in my last video, I did add more shares during this downturn, but definitely understandable if some people are a little worried or upset about their shares being down. Okay, on to some news. First of all, we did have an announcement from Rocket Lab that they have a new contract to build a spacecraft, launch it with just 24 hours notice, and operate it on orbit as a part of the Tactically Responsive Space Program for Space Systems Command, similar to what Firefly did with their Alpha vehicle. This is a $32 million contract, so launch usually we're looking at around $8 million. The rest presumably would be for manufacturing of that spacecraft, although usually I think a Photon only costs like $3 million. So quite a good contract here for value. I think a lot of that extra money is coming because of the requirement that they have to be able to launch on such short notice. So also launching out of Wallops, I would imagine, so probably a bit extra there. But nonetheless, I think this contract should be quite high margin revenue, which is nice to see. If you want to check Rocket Lab's investor relation page for more details, they do have some more details on this TAC-RS mission here. It will be an exercise of a realistic threat response scenario and on-orbit space domain awareness demonstration. Rocket Lab and True Anomaly will both demonstrate the ability to rendezvous in proximity operation capable space vehicles and command and control centers, targeting 2025 for this launch. So just one launch, but good news in terms of the values and obviously the contract for building out that spacecraft as well. Next up, we have something that really took me off guard and kind of shocked me, to be honest with you. Electron, we're getting told, is close to launching again. Now, if you'll remember some previous videos, I talked about this. Adam Spice at a few conferences was kind of trying to walk back expectations on when Electron would refly. He said that they were probably unlikely to refly a booster this year. More likely it would be next year as they kind of focus on that cadence and put more of their efforts towards Neutron. So this release kind of caught me and caught everyone off guard who I've talked to. According to Rocket Lab, this pictured Electron has been to space and back, and it is getting ready to go again. This Electron is going to be returned to the production line to undergo final acceptance and qualification testing in preparation for reflight. So basically, my understanding is that once a vehicle rolls off the production line, it has to have acceptance testing, which means they test that it meets all their requirements, and qualification testing. Once those two items are completed, then it is certified as ready to refly. So really shocking, and it makes me wonder what's going on. Was Adam a little wrong, or maybe the communication's a bit off, or did they change their mind and decide they do want to relaunch a booster soon? Or is this booster still not launching until next year despite going through the testing for reflight relatively soon? Very confusing to me, very confusing. Let me know what you think in the comments below. When is this booster going to refly? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Further details were given in this article. The step is a significant milestone in Rocket Lab's development program to make Electron the world's first reusable small orbital launch vehicle. This is the first time a tank has been moved back onto the standard production line in preparation for reflight. The stage was successfully launched and recovered as a part of the 4-of-a-kind mission on January 31st of this year, and has already passed more acceptance tests than any other recovered Electron stage. So it's already gone through a tank pressurization test, which I would imagine ensures that the structural integrity of the tank can still withstand the pressures required. Helium leak check to ensure there's no leaks. Carbon fiber structural testing. And yeah, it's looking quite good for this Electron, really just coming out of nowhere, because I really did not expect this, but I do consider it to be quite good news, because one of the things that I was a little disappointed on in the last earnings call was, hearing that we might be delayed on Electron reusability. So very good news from that front. Came out of nowhere. Very excited to hear it. I do hope there's no disconnect between Adam and Peter and the rest of the team in terms of communication. Maybe they changed their mind, or maybe it's something Adam was not as aware of, or maybe it's still going to be quite a while before this booster does refly, although to me that would be odd why they would release this piece of news then so publicly. And talking about reuse, we always have to share the amazing picture by Marco here, sitting astride the Electron after being recovered. Gotta love it. Very jealous that he was a part of those efforts. This was pretty cool. So Rocket Lab attended the Space Symposium recently, set up their own booth there. They did have a recovered piece of an Electron rocket. Looks almost like just a, oil container or something like that, but this is actually an Electron that has been to space. So pretty cool that people could come and touch that and see it in person. Peter Beck did arrive and speak to some officials there, and looks like an exciting event and a great way for Rocket Lab to get some more attention and publicity. Next up, Rocket Lab did get another new government contract. This one is also pretty nice. This will be a dedicated Electron launch that is scheduled to take place within 24 months from the contract award, and will lift off from Launch Complex 2 in Virginia. So we continue to see Virginia now the launch pad of choice for, government and security missions for the United States. The projected primary payload, a DiskSat, will demonstrate sustained very low Earth orbit, or VLEO, flight, and test a unique 1-meter diameter disc-shaped satellite bus that's designed to increase on-orbit performance. So this is even lower in the atmosphere than LEO, almost getting in towards the hypersonics territory that you see with HASTE. Now, exciting about this is the mission value is $14.5 million, and this is just for one launch, so that should be really great for margins as well, because once again, usually you're looking at more like $8 million a launch. Obviously, this one probably has some more difficult, more different requirements, so should be great for the average selling price on Electron when this one does launch, although we're still like 2 years out from that. This is a pretty cool mission I just figured I would share with you guys. The next generation solar sail technology is soon going to be launching from New Zealand aboard Rocket Lab's Electron later this month, testing, using solar waves, solar rays as propulsion, something that the great Carl Sagan was always a huge fan of, and I think it just looks super cool. So pretty excited for that launch, and always like to have Rocket Lab launching for NASA as well. Rocket Lab's next mission is coming up around April 24th, so we're starting to get a little bit closer there, maybe 12 days away. It will be launching from New Zealand and carrying 2 satellites for 2 separate customers, NeonSat-1, which is an Earth observation satellite, and that previously shown solar sail from NASA, so pretty exciting launch coming up quite soon. We do also have some pretty cool images here for that satellite in Rocket Lab's clean room as it gets ready to be mounted on the Electron for launch. Okay, another announcement that caught me off guard. Basically, Rocket Lab, with their expertise on carbon composites, using it for their Electron. If you remember, they recently also acquired part of a sailboat company, Sail GP, who makes their boats using carbon composites as well, and they'll be able to take those manufacturing techniques and machines to build out their own carbon composite structures. So now, instead of just building those structures for themselves, they'll also be selling carbon composites to other companies. It will be part of their space systems division, and other players who need carbon composites can simply buy them from Rocket Lab. I don't have a sense of how big of a market this is. I think any expansion to Rocket Lab's business is obviously good and will bring in more revenue. I have to assume this isn't massive, but we'll have to wait and see how it hits the financials over the next few years. Nevertheless, a new addition to space systems is never anything to complain about. Now on to some bad news, unfortunately. So if you'll remember a while back, SpaceX debuted a new rideshare mission called Bandwagon versus the transport missions they were already operating. And these Bandwagon missions do launch to a different orbital inclination. Now, there was a lot of concern when this was announced because this inclination is where many of Rocket Lab's customers do need to be launched, and it was thought that this may impact some of the demand for Electron, and we would see some of those payloads perhaps switching over to SpaceX Falcon 9 rideshares. Well, it does appear at least that has happened. Thanks to Scott O, by the way, for flagging this on Twitter. He caught the article first, so I just figured I'd share his Twitter account here. If you're interested in following, definitely worth a follow. He also does make investing videos on YouTube on Rocket Lab and other companies, so feel free to check him out. But Hawkeye 360, it's starting to look like this company, which had previously secured contracts with Rocket Lab for Electron launches, will be canceling those and going with Falcon 9 rideshare missions. Hawkeye's CEO said this partnership is an important relationship for Hawkeye 360. It provides a basis for affordable launch and launch integration services that allow us to focus on bringing our analytics solution to market at greater speed and efficiency. So Rocket Lab, as I said, already has launched Hawkeye 360 satellites in the past, and they do have a multi-launch contract to see Rocket Lab delivering 15 satellites in 5 clusters to low Earth orbit across 3 Electron missions. You can see that Hawkeye does show up here on the upcoming missions page for Rocket Lab. So looks to me like with this new offering from SpaceX, they can get a cheaper price from SpaceX than Electron, and unfortunately, Electron will be losing those launches most likely. Let me know if you read it differently down below and you think Hawkeye 360 is going to be launching with both Falcon 9 rideshare and SpaceX's Electron. To me, it doesn't seem as likely. So that's unfortunate, but we do have some announcements of new contracts, hopefully balancing that out, although they are a little further out in the future and mostly government contracts. I do like to see the commercial side pick up as well and not rely only on governments for launch services. Just one other item here I wanted to touch on quickly. President Biden apparently wants to have a new tax on space launch companies. I think it's more focused on SpaceX than anyone else because they're launching so frequently, and it's really taxing on the FAA to make all these arrangements, make sure there's no planes in the area, do all their regulatory due diligence they need to do, and they don't really recover any fees from it. The FAA team apparently is only 140 people, so it's fairly small. So they want to start taxing space launch companies, and it would apply to everyone, including Rocket Lab, for their Wallops launches. So while I don't have any concerns about this making Rocket Lab less competitive, because the same tax would apply to everyone launching out of the US, perhaps it would raise prices a little bit for everyone on launch and, could have a negative impact on launch demand down the line as it makes things more expensive. Ultimately, though, the whole industry does need the FAA to be operating well and quickly and not slowing things down. So a more well-funded FAA that could get money from this tax may go a ways to helping the industry continue to grow and support more and more launches that are coming down the line. Airplanes, after all, do already pay 7.5% tax on the ticket price of their flights, but rockets pay no such tax as of yet. So that's all the news I have for you today. We have a couple exciting new contracts for Rocket Lab from the US government for launch, for building out a satellite, and we also, it looks like, are losing launch contracts from Hawkeye 360, although I don't know all the legal implications of whether they have to pay any fees for getting out of that contract they already signed with Rocket Lab. TBD on that one, but we're finally seeing the first impacts of this announced bandwagon flight from SpaceX. Really, the biggest news and the most shocking news to me, though, was that this Electron booster that flew in January of this year is heading back to the production lines for qualification to refly. I find that to be incredibly exciting, but also a little puzzling because Adam did say they weren't focusing on that this year. So something to keep an eye on for the future, and a bright spot as far as I'm concerned. It can only help with margins and help with supporting a higher cadence to have reuse up and running. Let me know how you feel about all these news items, or if I did miss anything that you thought was important. I'd also be interested to hear what you're doing with the stock price at these levels. Anyone selling covered calls, selling puts, buying calls, or just buying shares? Let me know down in the comments below. I do hope you guys have a great weekend. If you haven't already, please do consider subscribing. It helps out so much as I continue to try to grow out this channel. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.